Welcome to Something More to Podcast, where we move through topics wherever the conversation takes us. I'm your host, Richard Collins.
And I'm Adam Culbertson.
To talk about today is this cancel culture thing that's popped up a lot lately, and I guess more in particularly basically holding people accountable to things that they may have said or done in the past. It's a really tough subject. I myself am very split on it, just in general. I think in a lot of ways, like, people get really, really hung up on trying to judge people for every little thing they may have ever said or done.
Hey, I'm guilty of it. Sometimes I get caught up in it.
Right. And I mean, it's just to assume that, people never grow or change or learn, or, people never, advance past a point where they were previous in their life. And in a lot of these cases, I don't agree with the things that were said. You look at some of the older cases, like with Paula Deen, racial slurs coming out that she had said decades previously, and a lot of stuff kind of went away for her, which, that one I always felt was really messed up. Again, I don't agree with the racial slur, but I also don't agree with taking everything away from her because some recording popped up from a long time ago that, was of a time when she may have thought differently. She may have thought that it was okay. And in a lot of cases, I think culture at the time may have made her think it was okay.
Yeah. And something that like, I guess it was around the same time that came out was like the whole Dog the Bounty Hunter thing. Mm-hmm. Where it wasn't a long time ago that it was like a recorded voicemail that he left for his son or something, and he called his son's girlfriend or fiance. He used the N-word, or something like that. He used some racial slur, without pulling it up and listening to it again. This is just off of memory. But then his whole career went away after that. But that's one that, again, don't agree with him, but it was something that it ruined his career. And it happened like right then, like it wasn't something that happened previous. And I do agree that, like, and the Duck Dynasty, their dad, he said some racist shit, and their whole show got canceled. Yeah. Like I don't even think all of them thought the same way as their dad, but like their dad ruined it for all of them.
But I mean, I think to a certain extent, when it's a lot more in the moment, it maybe has more merit.
Yes.
It's a little more of a valid issue. But that being said, I think to some extent, like, intent kind of should play into it, as well as like the situation. Like when you're talking about private conversations, again, I don't really agree with it. Like, I don't think that it's a good thing to say at all.
Yeah.
But something that's in a private conversation, is kind of different. Like, saying something out in public should be different from, leaving a family relative a voicemail.
Yeah. And the big one is Twitter now.
Oh, yeah. The big one is Twitter. Although that being said, I think that social media in general should be considered to be in public.
Oh, yeah,
because
definitely.
Generally speaking, it's available to the public.
I mean, it's social media. Mm-hmm. It is very public.
You should at least expect that anybody should be able to see that.
Yeah.
And you should act accordingly. Like, but I don't know. There's a lot of weird things, like with racial slurs, especially the particular one, the N-word, because of the fact that it gets thrown around by certain parties, not really in an offensive manner, but a lot of people take offense based on who is saying it and not really in the way that it's said.
Yeah.
That being said, I do want to try and respect anybody that I can. Like, regardless of the way that it's used, I don't want to offend anybody by saying it in any way.
Yeah, I would never say it. Yeah.
That being said, I think, private conversations, that really is between you and the people that you're talking with. Like, especially when you're talking about, black friends that you have or something like that. Like, if they're okay with you saying it in that same kind of friendly way with them, then nobody else should be able to come in and just say, well, that's horrible, like blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
Like, that's between you and them. It's not anything to do with you. It's a private conversation, and like, that's between you and them.
Mm-hmm.
But just saying it like in a hateful way, just saying it out in public, I mean, yeah, that's going to be offensive to a lot of people.
Yeah, and you're going to get repercussions for it, whether it's your career or anything.
Right. And I guess the more recent incident that kind of brought on this topic is the whole Shane Gillis thing, a comedian that was hired for SNL for this season that's just recently started.
Mm-hmm.
But then an old joke of his, I don't even know how old it was offhandly, but basically a clip came out of that, and it was some racist joke using some kind of slur, and everything kind of blew up from there. Like SNL fired him almost immediately because of the backlash on like social media and everything. And then now you have this whole division in the comedians community of like people that are supporting SNL for firing him and basically trying to ostracize him. And then you have comedians that are completely on his side and being like, well, they should have never fired him. Like, all he was doing was just throwing something that he thought might be funny out there, and it wasn't. So, we shouldn't be just completely ruining everything for him just because he had a bad joke that didn't work.
Yeah. And I think it was just a joke that he did one time, right? I don't know a whole lot about the whole situation.
I'm not sure of the exact detail, but I know that there were at least a couple of incidents of him using like some hateful language in jokes and things like that. And it's one of those things that, I don't know. I've long since been a proponent of comedians being able to say whatever they want to say.
Yeah.
'Cause I mean, it's in the name of comedy. Like, it's not really in the name of being offensive. And I think that in general, if something's funny, it's funny.
Yeah.
Like, it doesn't really matter how offensive it is or isn't. Like, if it's actually funny, it's actually funny.
Yeah.
And people need to just kind of get over their sensitivities.
Yeah.
That being said, I think that there is kind of a line there. Like, there is a point where it's not really enough to even be considered an attempt at being funny. Like, just saying racial slurs because they're edgy and you think that being edgy is funny, shouldn't really cut it.
No, and you won't have that very long of a career if that's your comedy.
Right. But it kind of feels like in some ways, like, there are comedians out there that are kind of defending it as just like, oh, well, he tried. It's like, but I don't know. Did he really?
Yeah.
Like, I don't know.
I mean, I looked it up because we were talking about something else through text messages. We were just texting different articles that we were finding and sharing and everything. And it just came up about cancel culture and it being a possible topic for us to talk about. So I looked it up because I had seen it. I had seen some headlines, but I didn't really look into it. I love SNL. I watch it, maybe not every week, but it's on Hulu, so I always keep up in some way. It may be late, but I keep up. But I didn't really look into it at the time. I just saw it. I saw that he said some racist shit and they got rid of him. He didn't last but like 8 days or something like that. That's all I knew about it. So I looked it up, and I didn't think it was a funny joke. Like, I thought it was a terrible joke, and it wasn't in context, out of context. Like, it was a poor joke. And it was in poor taste as well. But that's all I know about it. That's really all I know about it.
And that's where it kind of gets a little difficult because to some extent, like, you know, it's very opinion based as to what's funny and what's not funny.
Yeah.
But at a certain point, like, I mean, there has to at least be some thought into like some kind of, you know, cleverness with it. Like, I mean, you can't just, you know, say racial slurs and just be like, oh, it's funny because I said slurs.
Yeah.
Like, you know, and I think there was definitely a time, like I guess like early 2000s around about, I guess in the aughts, where comedy started getting kind of synonymous with just shock. Like where like every new comedian coming out was just all about shock value,
vulgar.
And, yeah. And it's like at a certain point, like it's not really funny anymore. Like, like I get that the first couple of people to do stuff like that, it could actually be kind of funny in a certain way. I mean, when you look at the root definition of humor, like what comedy is, like what humor is, what makes people laugh is things that go against expectation.
Yeah.
Like it's a biological response to relieving like a tense situation. Like, I mean, that's what it is. Like, you know, like a long time ago, whenever people were still like nomads and had to worry about like vicious beasts out in the wilderness coming and eating them or whatever. Like, you know, being out in the woods and seeing something that you thought was a dangerous predator is a really tense situation. Like, it gets you all adrenaline up and, you know, ready to fight or flight, you know, all that kind of stuff. And then when you find out, oh, well, you know, it wasn't actually a predator, it was actually just a shadow. Like, that was a biological response to kind of laugh it off. It's just like, oh, you know, it wasn't actually dangerous at all. I was scared of like a couple of sticks and leaves.
Yeah.
Like,
hell, I think
you know,
probably everybody as a kid had that reaction.
But yeah, I mean, that's where it all comes from. Like, it's a biological response to de-stress. And so when you start looking at the root of humor, of comedy, like it's really going against what is expected or what is normal. And so for the first few people that started doing that kind of stuff, where it was just pure shock value, like it was like that, because this isn't something anybody should be saying.
Yeah.
And you know, as horrible as it is, I could see how people could find humor in that. But when you start getting to more and more people doing this kind of stuff, it's no longer all that weird. It starts becoming normal and not really even funny anymore.
Yeah.
Because you can just see it for the horrible thing that it is.
Yeah.
And I think we've long since passed the point where shock really has any kind of humorous value anymore.
I think a good example, because I can't stand her stand up. I can't stand anything that she's in just because she does that vulgar shock value kind of comedy, is Amy Schumer. I can't stand her stuff. Like, I've even avoided like listening to or watching anything that she's in, because it was just like, oh, she's like, oh, my vagina, like it's always my vagina and all that kind of stuff. Like I've never really found her funny.
Right.
But that was after, but like the shock value comedians, hell, even Family Guy, like they switched to shock value humor.
Yeah.
Rather than the really clever stuff. Yeah.
Like I couldn't even really watch it anymore when it got to that point.
Yeah. Where
it was like nothing but shock. Like, well, let's just do the most offensive and horrible thing that we can think of.
Yeah. And it just got old. Sarah Silverman, she had a lot of the shock value.
She's actually gotten a lot better.
She's gotten better. Yes, she has. I've listened to her. Well, I haven't listened to the whole thing. I was listening to just clips of Netflix stand up, and her stuff on Netflix is fucking funny.
And she's even talked about like looking back at her old material and just being ashamed of it.
Yeah.
I mean, because I mean it was horrible. It was baseless, and like, especially looking back at it nowadays, it's not even funny.
Yeah. No, it's not. Like the Sarah Silverman show, like, I thought it was funny when I was younger. I look back on it now and I'm just like, that's fucking stupid. But I've been I've seen a lot of shock value humor and everything over the years, and it just got old to where even the stuff that I thought was funny back then, it's not funny anymore.
Right.
But yeah, she has definitely changed her stand up and everything.
Exactly. And that kind of brings back to like the whole root thing about, having people held up to account for the things that they've done in the past. Like she has gotten past it. She has acknowledged that, hey, this stuff wasn't good. Like I don't even like that anymore. And like, she's a lot better for it. So, I mean, we definitely shouldn't be looking at like all of that stuff and just being like, oh, well, she's just a shock comedian. She's just there to like kind of gross out and shock people. And like, yeah. I mean, like she shouldn't be getting in trouble now for anything she did then. Like, it's kind of like the whole James Gunn situation with Guardians of the Galaxy and Disney firing him over the tweets that he made. Like, because I mean, it's like what was brought up at the time. Like, that was the comedy of the time. Yeah. Like, that's exactly the comedy we're talking about. Like, it was just that saying horribly offensive things and people found it funny. Mm-hmm. Like, and that was just humor then.
Yeah. Gilbert Godfrey.
Oh yeah.
He made the joke about the hurt or the tsunami or whatever.
Although that one I thought was genuinely funny.
Yeah, I thought it was hilarious because he lived there and he was like, oh, well, it looks like I'm about to have beachfront property. Like, that is his humor. Like, that was pretty clever. And he got fired from Aflac for that.
Like, I thought that was actually pretty clever and humorous.
Yeah, I did too.
I didn't really get like that kind of goes back to like what I was saying. Like, I don't think that there's anything that should be quote unquote like off limits for comedy. Yeah. Like, I don't think that there's a topic that should necessarily just be, well, you can never joke about this because there's nothing about this that could ever be funny.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, that he always pushed the limits. Like he that was what he did. Like I watched the documentary on him. I don't know if you ever watched it.
I don't think I've seen it.
I think it was on Hulu or it still is. But like, he's actually a really awkward person, like very awkward. And his coping mechanism for that, like he's OCD and all this stuff. Mm-hmm. And his coping mechanism with that is to find humor in everything. And it's very crude.
I mean, you see that in a lot of comedians. Like, not every comedian's like comes out as crude or anything. But I mean, you always see that about like Robin Williams. Like, he struggled a lot with like depression and issues like that. And his coping mechanism was being funny. Like, it was joking around about things, like doing these voices and acting silly. Like, that was how he dealt with it. And so, it's like, I think that there should be a big difference between, something that's maybe a taboo topic, but is legitimately, clever or, legitimately thought out versus just, saying something because it's vulgar or crass or offensive. Mm-hmm. Like, I don't think that there's really a place in comedy for saying things that are offensive for the sake of saying things that are offensive.
Yeah. Yeah.
But I still wholeheartedly believe that there should be no topic that you can't joke about.
Yeah. I mean, another one that he gets away with whatever he says, but it's very clever. His writers and everything for the show, Tosh, with Daniel Tosh with Tosh.0. He makes fun of everybody.
Oh yeah. I mean,
no matter race, your beliefs, allergies. He makes fun of allergies. like it's hilarious. Like he's like, well, gluten-free's not, or a gluten intolerance or gluten allergy is not a thing. Like, I don't know. I don't remember the whole joke. I'm not going to try and do it.
Yeah.
But I'm just like, that's fucking hilarious. Even though like I have a wheat allergy and I do eat gluten-free because of it. Right. I didn't take offense to it because, I mean, he's a fucking comedian. I mean, that's different than like racial jokes, but he makes racial jokes too. He makes fun of white people. He makes fun of black people. He makes fun of everybody.
Well, and
it's very clever. It's not just for the sake of being racist.
There can be jokes about specific groups of people without being offensive to those groups of people.
Yeah. Dave Chappelle. He makes fun of white people all the time.
Oh yeah,
it's hilarious. And
absolutely.
I mean, stereotypes wouldn't be a thing. I mean, they're a thing for a reason.
Yeah.
Like, I mean,
absolutely,
shit happens. Like, yes, white people do a lot of fucking stupid shit, and I'm guilty of almost every single one of them. Like that, just normal stuff. Well, like you get somewhere and a line forms behind you, and you're like, oh, we got here just in time. Like that's a white person thing to say.
It's a very white thing to say. Yeah, that's can confirm.
Yeah.
I'm white.
I've said it way too many times to count.
But yeah, like so I don't know. I think people in general take things a little too far. People go a little overboard with it, but I don't know. I'm kind of leaned on the side that maybe Shane Gillis went a little too far. Like I don't think there was enough of an earnest effort to try and be funny.
Yeah.
With those things that he said.
I think it was just trying to be edgy by being overtly racist.
But that being said, I don't think that he should necessarily be, completely ostracized for it. Like he should at least be given a chance to understand like why that's not okay and change for the better.
Yeah, and maybe he can in the future. I mean, not a comedian or anything. I mean, we've used other examples besides comedians.
I mean, you've got other examples like Paula Deen or James Gunn or Roseanne Barr.
Yeah, we talked about her, which I'm glad that I've watched the show. I liked the show when I was a kid. I was watching the reboot. I like the rest of the actors. I felt like Roseanne was kind of cringy in the reboot. But I watched every episode, and I'm glad they killed her off and kept the show going as the Connors. Yeah. And they got a second season. It just came out that I'm going to start watching because I've watched every episode of it so far. I like how they're doing the show. It still kept that whole feel of the original show, but it's modern time, and it's just a continuation of the family's life.
Yeah.
And I think they're doing great things with it, especially after killing off Roseanne and changing the whole the person that's writing it and producing it and everything, which I believe is can't remember her name, but it's the girl that plays Darlene. She's also played one of the professors on Big Bang Theory.
Yeah. I know who you're talking about, but I can't think of the actress's name offhandedly.
Yeah. But yeah, I think she's taken over as one of the writers and producers, and of course acting as Darlene. I get caught up in all the things that Trump has done in the past, but the difference with him is he keeps doing shit and saying shit.
Yeah,
that shows me that he hasn't changed. Like there's people that can change, and there's people that won't change, and they show it with their actions.
Right.
I think that's what we need to hold people accountable for. If they don't change, yes, hold their past accountable for what they're doing,
or at least hold it up as evidence that hey,
they've been doing this for a while. This isn't something new.
But I mean, just because somebody made some kind of bad comment or made a mistake when they thought differently back in the past, like it shouldn't dictate all by itself how we feel about them now.
Yeah.
Like that shouldn't be the one thing that you hold up and just be like, well, they shouldn't have a job now. Like I'm happy that James Gunn got his job back for Guardians 3.
Yeah.
Like I'm glad that Disney finally got past that and saw fit to rehire him. Because I hated that. I thought it was dumb. And like, I honestly believe that he wouldn't do that. I mean, these were all old tweets, like from years and years and years prior. Like, I want to say it was like, I don't know, close to 10 years, like prior or something like that.
Oh, wow.
But it was like, stuff that was said a long, long time ago. It's not like he's been still posting these kinds of things on Twitter since then.
Yeah.
Like it was just a handful of them from back then.
Hell, I mean, like that's why I avoid social media a lot. I think I'll do more with social media once Microphones and Monsters comes out. Like pushing
Right.
that, but it's not going to be like my own personal like shit. Like it's going to be the show, not me. But I mean, I'll be the one that's doing the social media for it. But like, that's why I avoid social media. Like, I don't use Facebook. I don't have a personal Twitter. I don't have a personal Instagram. I don't have any personal social media account that I use other than like Reddit. But I mean, I've been, whether it's Reddit or a guild forum or a video game forum, like I've always used forums, not necessarily social media.
Right.
Because Reddit to me is just a forum. Like, that's how I see it.
And
It's the same as it always has been.
Of Reddit is that it's largely anonymous.
Yeah.
Like, you know,
Yeah.
the majority of people that use Reddit, well, I would dare say the majority of people that use Reddit don't post anything, but
Yeah.
the majority of people that post things, like keep their identity secret.
Yeah. Like the one of the few people that I actually follow on Reddit is Poppin' Cream. Like, I don't know anything about the person in real
Right.
life, but they put out so much good information, like with facts that actually with links to references and where they got it from and like everything. But fuck, I just know him as Poppin' Cream. Like, I think it's a hilarious name.
Yeah.
But they're fucking doing a good service and providing information.
Yeah. I mean,
And
there's
that-
really
that
good
you can
information
look
you
up.
can find on Reddit.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a great resource for all kinds of things.
Now, I did see one thing today that had like some propaganda, which there is a lot of propaganda on Reddit
I mean,
as well.
but
You got to be
it's like-
careful.
It's like with anything else. Like,
Yeah.
you have to take everything with at least a little bit of a grain of salt. Like, you know, think for yourself. Like, figure out what's good and what's not.
Yeah, and don't just read headlines.
Yeah.
We can never say it enough. Like, look into shit. Just don't believe what you read. Don't believe what we say. Like, fucking look into it.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Like, if anybody's new listening, like, this is something we push a lot. We don't just we don't want you to just flat out believe what we're saying, agree with us, or anything like that. I want you to disagree with me. Try and prove me wrong.
Yeah. I mean, in either case, I would much prefer either scenario. Like rather than just believing us at our face value, whatever we say, like, I would much rather either situation. Either you look into it, you form your own opinion, and you disagree. We can even have a discussion, like why you disagree. Like,
We have a Discord for the show. Like, you could talk to us on the Podcast Junkie Discord.
like, or the other scenario, you look into it and you agree with us. Like,
Yeah.
that would be great too. Like, I would love to hear from people that have looked into it, done their research, like they agree, they share our point of view on the subject, or from people that have a different point of view. Like, you know, discussion is how we progress.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, that's the whole point of this. We don't necessarily meet eye to eye on everything, but we talk about it and we're adults about it. And like, we're still friends when we walk away.
Absolutely. I mean, we haven't really gotten into any haul out arguments over anything, I would say, but
No.
I mean when it comes down to it, like, you know, how can you really know that you believe in something if you don't test what you believe? Like, if you don't hear other points of view to actually be able to compare and go, well, does this make more sense? Do I like that a little more? Like, was I maybe wrong in what I thought before?
Yeah.
Like, I mean, you have to discuss. That's why the way that our government was set up should be brilliant. Like, because it should be about discussing topics and sharing opinions and thoughts on the whole thing. And, you know, oh, well, you know, I don't think that this would be good for my constituents because this is the kind of thing that it would affect, them, and putting forth facts. And, but that's not what we have.
And,
like,
and
that's
not just labeling the other side as liars and idiots.
yeah.
I mean, I do believe that there are some Republicans out there that are smart.
Oh, there absolutely are.
I feel like a lot of them are misled. I believe that they're listening inside of an echo chamber and not looking outside of it.
But I mean,
It doesn't make them necessarily dumb.
to be fair, both sides, Republican and Democrat.
Oh, totally. Oh, I see it all on both sides all the time because I do follow so many different news sources and I follow comment sections and everything, and it's happening on both sides. Like we've talked about it. Was it last or a different episode? We talked about assault rifles, and an AR-15 is not an assault rifle. That's something that they heard. Well, AR-15 is assault rifle. We need to ban assault rifles. We need to ban AR-15s. They're wrong because they are stuck in their echo chamber on the left, and we need to stop fucking having sides. We got to stop having sides. Like that's fucking it.
Absolutely. And I know we kind of
way off topic.
Got really, really sidetracked there. Like in the last bit. Like in essence, we're just saying, form your own opinions and talk to us. Like we'd love to hear other opinions, like whether they're similar to our own or completely disagree. We'd love to hear it. We'd love to talk them out.
And cancel culture, like people can change, and people have proven that they can change. Some people don't, some people do. Like
absolutely
look into it and don't just label somebody one thing just because they did something 30 years ago. Like they can be a completely different person now. I'm a completely different person than I was 10 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
And my life experiences have been the reason that has changed.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
So everybody can change.
Absolutely. But yeah, so sorry again for the off topic, but that's kind of the way things go here on Something More to Podcast.
Mm-hmm. Always.
But hope you enjoyed this week's episode, and hope you'll join us next week when we have Something More to Podcast.